we'll go ahead and start. So thank you, Bonnie, for preparing the readings today.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you all
welcome.
for being here. Looking forward to this discussion. I picked the topic of stress and anxiety just because it does seem to be a pervasive thought that as humans, we must be stressed, and we live in a fast-paced world that sort of lends itself to never feeling like we have everything done. There's to-do lists everywhere you look, and they're never complete. And if they are, then you have a new one going. And, you know, it's just, later I'll share a healing. I shared many, I don't know, weeks or months ago, however long we've been doing this meeting. It was one of the first I shared, but it was a very significant healing in my life regarding stress that I'm perpetually grateful for. So I'm going to start with some readings from the Bible and Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. The Bible I'm reading from the regular, or just the King James Version. So I'm going to start with Psalms. He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Then are they glad, because they be quiet. So he bringeth them unto their desired haven. Oh, that men would praise the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. Isaiah, fear ye not, neither be afraid. Have not I told thee from that time, and have declared it? Ye are even my witnesses. Is there a God beside me? Yea, there is no God beside me. I know not any. You know, that can sound confusing. There is no God. No, there's no God beside the God. Okay, Mark. And he began again to teach by the seaside, and there was gathered unto him a great multitude, so that he entered into a ship and sat in the sea, and the whole multitude was by the sea on the land. And he taught them many things by parables, and said unto them in his doctrine, and he said, whereunto shall we liken the kingdom of God? Or with what comparison shall we compare it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which when it is sown in the earth is less than all the seeds that be in the earth. But when it is sown, it groweth up, and becometh greater than all herbs, and shooteth out great branches, so that the fowls of the air may lodge under the shadow of it. And with many such parables spake he the word unto them, as they were able to hear it. And the same day, when the even was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, why are you so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, what manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? And Science and Health. Acquaintance with the science of being enables us to commune more largely with the divine mind, to foresee and foretell events which concern the universal welfare, to be divinely inspired, yea, to reach the range of fetterless mind. Truth brings the elements of liberty. On its banner is the soul-inspired motto, slavery is abolished. The power of God brings deliverance to the captive. No power can withstand divine love. What is this supposed power which opposes itself to God? Whence cometh it? What is it that binds man with iron shackles to sin, sickness, and death? Whatever enslaves man is opposed to the divine government. Truth makes man free. I have some more readings later, but we'll stop there for a question or a discussion or whatever you'd like to share. Maybe one of the hosts or co-hosts can post the questions to the chat, but I'll just read the first one for now. What are some ways we can replace the feeling of stress with a more freeing and uplifting sense of life? So again, feel free to share anything that comes to you that's not even related, just feels like something you want to share.
You know, the first thing that came to mind for me when you were reading was one of my go-to lines from hymn 148, where it says, "The storm may roar without me, my heart may low be laid, but God is round about me, and can I be dismayed?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question, but I think we know the answer. And I think of that phrase whenever something turbulent or kind of stressful pops up in my life. And that assurance that God is the bedrock, stable, constant. And then from that basis that we can look at whatever we're dealing with and have that firm foundation for dealing with it. I find that a great way to kind of not feel stress in the first place, kind of to short circuit that process of feeling stress, not even having to deal with stress, but to prevent it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I like the she says fetterless and free. We are free. It's our divine right to be free. So whatever enslaves man, whatever holds us captive, is not from God, which means it's not our source and can't be a part of our experience. I think when you're feeling stressed, it seems like it's too heavy to see through or out of. So to me, it's like having a rock in the storm. Sometimes I cling on to something that's very healing and comforting. Like last night, I was teaching a Zumba class, and the last one I taught it last week, Wednesday before church, I have a class, and it was like the 9th class I had taught in 3 days, and I was feeling very tired, and I started to make some mistakes. And so I'm up there on a stage, and I have 20 people in front of me, and there's no time to stop and sort of say, hold on, I need a minute to regroup. So, this last night, I started to feel a bit overwhelmed, like you're going to mess up. Something's going to go wrong. And I just replaced that with the idea, or just the word, I could see it written in my mind's eye, mind, capital M, mind. And I just held on to that word of God, just like a rock, and just clung to it and smiled out at my students, knowing I have a very good God on my side who loves me very much and loves all of them very much. And God is life. And there's no error here. There's no sense of error. I can't mess up. And if I do, they'll all forgive me because love abounds here. And I was smiling because I smiled through the whole class, of course, but it was a different smile. It was a secret smile that, I have a God that loves me, and I can cling to that. And the whole class was great. I didn't mess up, but if I had, it's fine. But the class was harmonious and fun. And so I was just grateful to have that, even in the moment, in the thick of the stress or whatever you want to call that, anxiety or chaos, there's a calm in the storm. And it's permanent and perfect.
One of the things that struck me in the hymn that you mentioned, Scott, I know that when I first took notice of that hymn, I used to think, the storm can roar around me. But then it struck me that that word without can also mean I'm not included in it.
Mhm.
It can do whatever it likes without me participating. And I found that very helpful. You know, whatever's going on around me, it can go on without me taking part. It may be outside me, but it can't be within me. And so I just thought that was helpful. And maybe too, why do we feel stressed if we do? Usually it's because we're trying to do everything ourselves. And so when it's a form of human will in a way. And if we remember that we really can't do anything without God, and God isn't stressed. He's got millions of children, billions. God's not stressed, so I don't need to be stressed either if I reflect him. What I need to accomplish is really just being the expression of God. It's not something that I have to do on my own.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joy, that I think a lot of times I get caught up in, if I'm feeling stressed, that I have so much to do, and how can I personally do all of this? And I think in a different talk one time, Bonnie, you shared a great quote about one of your friends told you something about, if you're worrying, it's like you're not trusting God in the future or something. I'm probably butchering it, and I'll let you say it. But I really think that's a great reminder for me when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, that I'm not separate from God, and I'm probably worried about something in the future, to kind of come back into the present moment. And what's in the present moment, God is present, and what's true about God in the present moment, the kingdom of heaven is at hand now, and to start treating my own thoughts. And really grateful for these ideas, because a lot of people that I'm around every day, including my family, oh yeah, worry is ingratitude to God in the future. So good. Thank you. People carry a lot of stress, and I often want to say, this works for me, just try it. And sometimes I do, and I need to stick my foot in my mouth, because I end up, throwing my pearls to the swine or whatever, and I get trampled on. But yeah, these ideas are just so wonderful, and so grateful at this time in my life to be a Christian Scientist, to be able to take the route of, not concentrating on the stress and the anxiety, but instead finding what frees me, what takes off the shackles, what's going to uplift me in this moment. So great topic. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A few things Joy reminded me of, just by saying why would we feel stress? We are God's reflection, and God is not stressed. just reminded me of the definition of God, God, the great I am. And, I love to use that as, just a reminder to try not to finish a sentence that ends I am anything that's unlike God. So, even just correcting your speaking when you're talking, maybe that touches on the next question, but just as we speak, trying not to label ourselves as stressed. I am stressed is not something God would say, or God is, so we can know it's not true about us either. I think I lost what the second thing I was going to say, so I'll stop there for the moment. Hi, Kate, welcome.
Hello.
We're just discussing the belief in and healing of the idea of stress and anxiety, and how we don't have to be enslaved in that sense of life as chaotic and stressful.
Beautiful.
I'll continue. I have some more passages from the Bible. 2 Corinthians. O ye Corinthians, our mouth is open unto you, our heart is enlarged. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. Philippians. Therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Be careful for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. In Science and Health. Spirit and its formations are the only realities of being. Matter disappears under the microscope of spirit. Sin is unsustained by truth, and sickness and death were overcome by Jesus, who proved them to be forms of error. Spiritual living and blessedness are the only evidences by which we can recognize true existence and feel the unspeakable peace which comes from an all-absorbing spiritual love. When we learn the way in Christian Science and recognize man's spiritual being, we shall behold and understand God's creation, all the glories of earth and heaven and man. The universe of spirit is peopled with spiritual beings, and its government is divine science. Man is the offspring, not of the lowest, but of the highest qualities of mind. Man understands spiritual existence in proportion as his treasures of truth and love are enlarged. Mortals must gravitate Godward. Their affections and aims grow spiritual. They must near the broader interpretations of being and gain some proper sense of the infinite, in order that sin and mortality may be put off. This scientific sense of being, forsaking matter for spirit, by no means suggests man's absorption into deity and the loss of his identity, but confers upon man enlarged individuality, a wider sphere of thought and action, a more expansive love, a higher and more permanent peace. I seem to have a lot of friends who kind of also succumb to the belief that, life is stressful. So I was thinking, and this is just in general, how we can talk about Christian Science or spiritual, a spiritual sense of life with friends and family. How can we do that? Does it have to sound preachy? Can it be something that is fun to do? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll share something too that I've been working with a friend, but if anyone has anything to share first, feel free.
I was just going to jump back to the readings that fear ye not, along the lines of what Christy had brought out in that quote. I feel like anxiety is fear of what's not, of the future, of what's going to happen, of whatever. And I feel like stress is often fear of lack, such as how am I going to make the payments this month, or how am I going to be smart enough, or how am I going to get this, or how's this going to be covered, or how's this all going to work harmoniously. It's always the suggestion of lack or whatever. And there was one idea that my teacher Jack Hubble had mentioned in a talk one time that I really liked. He said basically stress or tension is when you have two things that are pulling apart, and pressure is when you have two things that are pushing together. And you don't have two things. If you only have one God, there isn't something else to push against. So if you get rid of that sense of duality or something that's pulling us, whether we call it mortal mind or error or devil or whatever it is, distraction, when you work through that belief and see that there is only that one cause, that one great and only cause, and that one source, and that one love, and that one mind, then there ceases to be other things that can pull us in different directions. And I just really like that idea because it takes it off our plate. And I love the concept that letting go and letting God, just turning things over to God, because it's not, the battle isn't ours, so to speak. And God is much more infinite and all wise and all loving than we are. So it's kind of a wonderful respite to know that we're never outside of that love. So that's some of the ideas that I work with when there's a suggestion of stress or anxiety.
Thank you. I really love that. The not pulling and pushing. There can't be two. Sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, I was just going to say, I love those ideas. They're really lovely. I have 6 children, and have been a working mum. They're all growing up, but it's still pretty hectic. But years and years ago, when I was at university, I should put my video on. I'm sorry, I'm in the laundry. I had a really stressful time because I had to get an essay done in 2 weeks instead of the normal 5 weeks it took me. And I contacted a practitioner friend, and she just said, the essay is already done. It is already done. And at first I had no idea what she was talking about, but I stayed with that. And of course, the essay was done easily in 2 weeks. The books just kind of landed in my hands. I found everything I needed, the music I needed, everything. And I've really stayed with that thought, because often life can seem very hectic, and you sort of wonder if you've got enough time to get everything done. But I always start every project, everything I have to do with that understanding that it's already complete in God. It's already done, and I just have to go forward and witness its unfolding. So that's helpful. But I'd be really interested to know if anyone's got. I feel quite stressed sometimes about sharing Christian Science, because didn't have such good experiences with that when I was at school. And even my children, they sort of left Sunday school and they're a bit opposed to it, some of them. But I do say, well, I'll pray. and they accept that. But I try to avoid talking about Christian Science, and I'd love to feel a bit freer being able to share it with people who maybe don't know about Christian Science, but I get very nervous. So I'd be really grateful for any thoughts on that. I'm sorry, I'm going to close my video off.
I think that's a really good topic that could be a topic all on its own.
Yeah.
You know, and thanks for sharing, Kate. I really enjoyed that idea, as well as yours, Joel, that your teacher shared with you. I think what I do in my life, I am a Christian Scientist, but I work at a school that is not religious, and I try to share ideas kind of in a universal way with, you know, obviously I can't say it's Christian Science, and I do find that ideas can be uplifting and helpful, even if we say, oh, this is not, you know, I'm using Christian Science, or this is a treatment or a demonstration or whatever with that terminology, but still the ideas are very, very uplifting and helpful. Also with my colleagues, but with my family, I just want them to know that that's what I rely upon, and that's what really helps me. You know, I'll offer to my son or my daughter, you know, I can pray for you about this, and you can expect, you know, to have relief or whatever. And I always give them the option, but I want them to know that that's what their mom relies upon. And I also hope that they see how I kind of, not always, but kind of cruise through what can be really trying times. And it's not because of me, of course, it's because of the ideas that keep me kind of buoyant above, you know, the stormy waters. And so I think I just offer it, you know, I offer it to my family, and then I need to learn more ways, better ways to actually say sometimes, I'm a Christian Scientist. That's what I rely upon. I need that spiritual courage at moments. Yeah, so I'm kind of working with that. Great topic. How do we share?
I love those thoughts, and just to be loving. I think just to be loving, and maybe gently open up another possibility to people is what I tend to approach. But yeah, one day maybe we'll talk about being more open about it. Thank you.
I think it's important to share it. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but often I think back to the way that Jesus talked to people with parables, right? He didn't just come and say kind of the spiritual ultimate of all things and lay it on them, right? Because they didn't understand it. And I think we talked about this a week or two ago with Rachel, where she was talking about, you know, he gave parables on fishing because they were fishermen, right? Or he gave parables on sowing because they were, you know, farmers. Like he used things that they could understand. And so I just love that idea of, you know, it doesn't, I think sometimes in Christian Science, we use a lot of lingo and terms that, you know, we don't necessarily need to use to describe things. I think if you can put it in very simplistic terms that people can understand, and maybe relate it to something that they're familiar with, I think that can be really helpful. Yeah, I think it's really important to share it in whatever way. And I love the idea of that you mentioned, Christy, of offering to pray for kids, which I do for my kids as well, but also, you know, letting them know that they can expect healing from it.
I've always loved sharing Christian Science ever since I was a student at Principia College, and I was going back and forth from California to St. Louis Airport on planes, and I was a young person and alone sort of for the first time, and would sit down next to adults who would often say, "Where are you headed?" And I would say, "Back to college," or "Home from college," and "Where do you go?" and "What's that?" and "What's Christian Science?" And all of a sudden we were having a conversation about Christian Science. And it never felt remotely scary. It was always a joy, because I guess I just thought it was such a blessing in my life that why not share it? And now, as a, you know, a grown person, I I think leading a life that is something, your life is an example of, what you believe and what you live and your faith. And often people are drawn to me and sort of either ask, like just last week, a student of mine came up and said, through tears, she said, "You seem like a very spiritual person. I was wondering if you could pray for me. My mom is this and that, and I'm scared and sad." And I said, "Yes, of course, I can, absolutely." And a few other times I've had the opportunity, just if you have conversations with people and enough time goes by where it's like you start to see a pattern of fear or stress or just anger at society or the world, and you don't hold those thoughts. You are constantly changing your thought even as you're having the conversation time and again with that certain person. You can finally just maybe, I feel, and this regarding the topic of stress, say, do you have something you can hold on to that's maybe more reliable than that idea? And that maybe sounds a little weird, but I said that to a friend a few weeks ago. She's been dealing with some things, and it's just all error. Life is awful. Life is stressful. Everything is terrible. And so I have to speak up at that point, and I'll say, friend, let's find something more reliable, more concrete and permanent to hold on to. And that's a nice segue. And often people want that. They want comfort. They want divine love. They don't care what it's called. They just want it. They don't know they want it. They don't think they do. They say, no, I don't want Christianity. But I feel like everybody wants this divine comforter. Oh, and I was going to say, I think was somebody just saying something about time, maybe. Kate, was she just, there's never enough time. We were in St. Louis this weekend, and my son, who's 10, was so kind of obsessed with what time is it in California. So what time should I feel like it is, right? So it's 7:30, but I feel like it's 5:30. It's 9:30. I'm not tired because it's really 7:30. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's 3:30. So, it's like, I was like, hey, okay. First of all, time has no place in infinity, right? And I changed just, thinking, let's stop obsessing about time, stop making an idol of time, and know that there is no time. And that can relate again to sort of the sense that there's never enough time to get anything done. Just setting that, that belief in time as a power greater than God aside as well.
I think one of the times when I get most stressed probably is when I'm driving and I feel like I haven't got enough time to go where I'm going. And I've had a number of experiences with that, but I think yesterday evening, I had to get to my choir practice, and it was in a venue that I didn't know. And I thought that I'd left enough time, but when I looked at the estimate of how long it would take me to get there, it was longer because of the traffic. And I thought, well, if I'm doing something right, it's a good activity, then I must have the opportunity to do it punctually. And so when somebody cut in front of me, I started expleting, and then I thought, no, he's God's child. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get upset. It's not going to stop me from being there on time. And I just felt this wonderful peace coming over me, and just, it was like I was in a peace bubble. And then a little bit later on, something also happened. And again, I just said, no, I'm not going there. It's a right activity, and I have a right to my dominion, and God's in control of everyone on the road, and he's in control of me, and we're all moving harmoniously in his kingdom, and his kingdom is in me, which is very strong in the lesson this week. And I got there, and there were people outside in the car park, and so I knew that I was in plenty of time, and it was all very peaceful and harmonious. But the feeling that stayed with me, which I've had very often in the last few years or so, of a stillness and a peace. And I'm sure when you're in touch with other people, they feel that too. Because I remember years ago when I was taking my final exams at the university, there was a Christian Science friend of mine there, and I just felt the peace oozing out of her, and she didn't need to say anything. It was just coming out of her, the peace, and I'm sure all the people around her felt that too. So when our thought is calm, when we know we're doing the right thing, and the steps of a wise man are ordered by the Lord, there's no need to get stressed out.
I had a really great experience similar to that. I had an exam to take in the city in San Francisco, which without too much traffic might be about 45 minutes, but then who knows, if there's an accident, it could be really bad because you could have to cross a bridge. So I had a specific start time. I had to be at this exam taking facility at a certain time, and I left in plenty of time, even considering traffic, but there was worse traffic than I could have imagined. And my initial reaction was complete and utter, stress, of course. And then I started to pray, and I said, there's nothing else I can do right now but pray. And so, and not just for myself, actually not for myself, because that would be silly just to beg God to get me there on time. That's not how it works. So I just started to pray about all the people around me, wall to wall people, as far as I could see. And I just loved them all. I was praying just for everyone I could see, and everyone as far as the eye could see, and just cherishing each one of God's ideas. And I didn't see any honking, flipping off, anger, cutting off even. Everyone is staying in their lanes and just waiting patiently for us to creep inch by inch across. And I kept saying the same thing. If this is God's idea, if it's right for me to get to this place on time and take this test, which I am prepared for, I've done the work, I've done the studying, I am prepared. It can't be withheld from me. And I showed up with 10 minutes to spare and walked in and passed, and and it's so memorable in the end. Instead of sitting there in traffic, white knuckling the steering wheel and begging to get there on time and angry at everybody who's cutting you off or whatever, man, what a healing those experiences are for the world. I'm so grateful, actually. In the end, after something like that, I'm so grateful to have been able to express all of that. Well, I have one more Bible story I'll read from 1 Kings. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him, and said unto him, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And he came thither unto a cave, and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said unto him, what doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I, only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And from Science and Health. The infinite truth of the Christ cure has come to this age through a still small voice, through silent utterances and divine anointing, which quicken and increase the beneficial effects of Christianity. I long to see the consummation of my hope, namely, the students' higher attainments in this line of light. And I have a few lines from a few hymns that I always rely on when I am feeling stressed. Hymn 49, the 4th verse, drop thy still dews of quietness, till all our striving cease. Take from us now the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. In hymn 93, verses 3 and 4, dwelling in love that cannot change, from anxious fear man finds release. No more his homeless longings range, God keepeth him in perfect peace. In perfect peace, with tumult stilled, and havened where no storms arise, there man can work what God hath willed, the joy of perfect work his prize. And 154, the 3rd verse. In thee I have no pain or sorrow, no anxious thought, no load of care. Thou art the same today, tomorrow. Thy love and truth are everywhere. All right. So we have one more question we can talk about and also just continue sharing. How can we release the chains when it seems like stress or anxiety is inescapable?
Can I share something? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, hello. The other week, our 19-year-old son was doing his driving test, and the first test, everything went wrong. And my husband called and he said, oh, he's really stressed. And I was praying to just know that he was in God's care. And there was one mind doing the driving and one mind doing the testing, but he failed. However, he was able to secure a test the next day, but in a completely different testing area. So I continued to pray, and Philip took him for a drive around, and we got a lesson before the test on the next day, so that he could get familiar with the area. Ellery was an experienced driver, so he'd done over 120 hours of practice and he knew what he was doing, but he just got stressed. Anyway, when they went off the next day to do the lesson and the test, I went with the lesson and I was walking around and praying, and the thought tried to creep in, well, he failed, maybe he's not ready, and for some reason I started thinking about worthiness, and I suddenly got this really clear sense that it isn't our worthiness that is in question, it's God's worthiness, which is unquestionable, and that we just express God's readiness, God's worthiness, and God's sense of calm and peace. And well, it turned out that the lesson was with someone who really knew what he was talking about and kept Ellery very much at ease. And then he had an examiner who did exactly the same thing. And I got a call a bit later to say, Mum, I'm going to have to buy a car now. So, and I was really grateful, but I was that awareness that our worthiness isn't something we earn humanly, but that is given by reflection from God was really, I was really grateful for that. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. That's great. What a wonderful demonstration. And to keep praying and to quiet those thoughts that creep in that say, you know, error is in charge here. And you just keep denying those. That's wonderful. I mentioned at the beginning, I had a really significant healing of stress. It's probably one of my kind of the ultimate healings in my life. That's a bedrock for which I always turn to. But I'll keep it brief. Through starting in early high school and then through, you know, a few years ago, 5 years ago, I suffered from like stress-induced breathing trouble. I just couldn't breathe anytime I had anything to do, any school-related work, anything that was on my plate. Anything to do. Basically, if I had something to do, if someone was relying on me, if I had something on my schedule, I couldn't breathe. I had just a 10-ton weight sitting on my chest. I couldn't catch a deep breath. I couldn't yawn. I couldn't get a good breath. And it was debilitating, honestly. And I didn't really pray about it all those years. I identified as someone with a problem, and I just kind of lived with it like it was like the color of my hair and my eyes. It was like who I was. And then it became really a problem. And I decided, okay, you're a Christian Scientist. You pray about every single thing in your life. Why aren't you praying about this? So I decided to start praying. And I don't remember, of course, you know, in the end, you don't necessarily remember everything you prayed about, but I certainly started to turn to God more as my life and my rock and my foundation for which I, you know, can lean on for everything. And, you know, a few, I don't know, years went by and things got better, but then I went to a Wednesday night service and was really ready for a healing. My thought was attuned to, you know, the healing words, and I was just ready. And the first hymn was 202, O dreamer, leave thy dreams for joyful waking. O captive, rise and sing, for thou art free. And it was 202, which we don't often sing. We often sing 412, which I loved at Principia. We'd sing that at the hymn sings all the time, and I loved it. But 202 is beautiful. And so when it's beautiful music, that's often very meaningful to me. And so I was immediately on a new plane. I was really uplifted and felt that just the first chink in that chain. And then the reader started, and she said, I'm going to read from the Bible, and whatever chapter it is, be not deceived. God is not mocked. And it was like just the scales falling off my eyes, or something just shifting, a huge shift in my life, and I was free. I could feel a physical change in me. And I kind of started crying. I was so grateful. And I remember after the service, I was completely healed. I just knew it. And I walked out to my car crying, just tears of joy from this seeming thing that had been like just a prison around me. And I've never had that since. And it's a permanent healing that I'm just so incredibly grateful for. So I think when my readings are kind of about being imprisoned or captive, that's what I'm kind of relating to. But anyway, just so grateful for that experience.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you too, Kate. We're glad you're here.
Kate, you reminded me of when I took my driving test. The first one I had was in a snowstorm and I failed too. And when I went again for another test, it was in a different area, very hilly area. And what came to me was a sentence, I think it's in Science and Health. Yes. The rule and its principle of operation never varies in science. And I just held on to that. I thought driving is according to principle and it never varies. And so if I'm obeying principle, my driving can't vary either. And of course I passed. That was a very meaningful sentence.
Thanks, Joy and Bonnie, for sharing those healing experiences. I'm sure it was my teacher that said, you know, how important it is to be grateful for other people's healings as well. Just to kind of cherish that and, you know, put myself in your shoes. What would that have been like? And then to experience that healing, how wonderful that is. So yeah, just I'm cherishing your healings. Just know that. Might have time for maybe one more comment or so. Anybody wants to share?
Something that might be relevant, something I've been thinking of a lot this week is reject, replace, and rejoice. So, and then I added recognize, because sometimes we don't realize that we're entertaining an error. So it's the 4 R's or the 3 R's. And I realized that we can, in every circumstance, as soon as we recognize error in our thinking, we can reject it with authority because it's not of God. We can replace it with a spiritual truth. And then we can rejoice in the reality of God. And that's been really helpful to me. We've had a lot going on lately, and just to be able to remind myself and to know that we do have the authority to reject any erroneous belief. So if it's not good, it's not of God, so it's not ours, whether that's anxiety or worry or lack or fear or sickness, we can reject it, right? I had a lovely friend when I was at uni again who used to say, we're not in the rehearsing business, we're in the reversing business. R seems to be a really good letter for healing treatments. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you again. I have that on a bookmark. I mean, handwritten. It's not a bookmark. It's a note card that I wrote that out, those 3 R's, and I keep it in the book. Whichever book I'm reading to my son actively, it transfers book to book, and it's always good to see it like every day, basically, those 3 R's. Every day I read to him, I can see it, take it out, look at it, put it in the next bookmark, and it's helpful. And it is 5. I guess we'll wrap up and say goodnight. Thank you all so much for your wonderful sharing and contributions and spiritual uplift. And thank you. Anything else, Joel or anybody?
Lily, did you have something to share? I couldn't tell if you were muted before.
Oh, Lily?
No,
Okay.
heard you. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Great to see everybody. Have a wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. Great
Thank
ideas.
you.
Yeah,
Free
well,
of
Great.
stress.
Thanks to everyone for their ideas.
thank you, Bonnie, and thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Tuesday, everyone.
Okay,
Bye.
good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.